In 1824, Louis Braille developed a tactile writing system for the blind and visually impaired, which has come to be known as Braille. Now, fast forward to the 21st century, the information age is in full swing, and Braille readers can share in this knowledge-based society we live in. To uncover the history of Braille and its use in South Africa, we are now joined in studio by Christo de Klerk. He's the Vice President of the South African Braille Authority. Thank you so much for being with us. Welcome to Morning Live.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for having me here.
All right, so we talk about Louis Braille developing this tactile writing system back in 1824. In South Africa, when did we start using Braille?
The first school for the blind was established in Worcester in 1881, and as far as we know, in around the year 1904, the first Braille printing press was established. It was then known as the Morelig drukkerij. That was in Worcester, and the latest surviving Braille documents we have was a magazine printed by that press in 1905. It was called De Pionier, or the Pioneer. It was bilingual, English and Dutch. And then the first real Afrikaans was printed. It was the Book of John from the Bible.
Okay.
It was printed in Afrikaans in 1933. At that stage, the Morelig drukpers, it became the press of the School for the Blind in Worcester, was the only Braille printing house in the country. Then in the early 50s, a couple, Ernest and Monica Kruger, started a project in their home, in their kitchen, manually transcribing material for students.
Yeah.
And they then established Braille Services, which has become the largest Braille production house in Africa.
Sure.
Then they carried on with the technology developed, and in the early 80s, they started computerized Braille production. That means that they used computers. A data typist would type the text into a word processor, and there would be software to translate the text into Braille, and it would be embossed on Braille paper. Now, here I have to explain that Braille, as we use it, is not a letter-for-letter representation, because that would be too bulky and slow to read.
Yeah.
So each Braille system has a set of contractions. It's almost like shorthand or snelschrift. And each language has its own, so it's not the same for all languages. So if you know the contracted Braille system of one language, you would still not be able to read another language if you did not know
that particular language. Because I know that we here in South Africa have actually got 9 different alphabets which represent 9 different languages. Is that correct? Is that where we stand right now?
Well, 11 in all.
So we've actually got 11 different alphabets in Braille.
Not the alphabet is the same. Alphabet and the contractions are the same, but each language has its own contractions. Let me give you an example. The letter K, if it stands on its own, in English, stands for the word knowledge. So please don't ask me to spell knowledge, because I just see the letter K.
Okay.
The letter K in Afrikaans stands for the word kan.
Yes.
In Xhosa, it stands for the word kodwa.
Yeah.
You see, so each language has its own, and there are many of them. Afrikaans and English have over 180 of them, and the African languages also have many, but fewer.
Yeah. That's amazing. So each language basically works in a different way. It's put together in a very different way using Braille.
Yes.
Okay.
So around about 1980, the development of the Braille codes for African languages started. We now have contracted Braille codes for all 11 languages in the country.
Sure.
And just very recently, a few years ago, the systems for Tsonga and Venda have been well, we can actually say redeveloped, because they did it scientifically. You know, they did word counts and string counts, and they had linguists helping them So those languages, codes are pretty modern at this stage.
Yeah, yeah. Let's have a look at sort of the amount of letters each alphabet actually contains. What are we talking about?
So that's an interesting question. Braille consists of 6 dots,
Yeah.
arranged in 2 columns of 3 rows of dots, so 2, 2, 2 above each other. Now with the 6 dots you can create 64 combinations.
Wow.
But there are many more printable characters than 64. So to represent some characters, we've got to use what we call 2 Braille cells.
Yeah, yeah,
You understand?
yeah.
Now, we can represent almost every printed character in that way. As I said earlier, the alphabet and the punctuation is the same for all our languages, just the contractions differ. But there are many symbols. If you think of codes like mathematics and science, they have many characters that are not normally encountered in novels, but we can represent them. So I think we have around 400 Braille symbols that we can represent.
Yeah, I've actually taken the book that was in front of you and I'm trying to hold it up to the viewers just to get an understanding of how it actually works, where you've got the Braille that's just above the letter here. So I know we're trying to get a camera shot of it, I'm not sure which one it is, but that's basically how it is. I mean, in terms of Braille, you move your fingers across and that's how you read.
Yes, you move your fingers from left to right to the middle of the page. Left hand goes back to find the next line while the right hand continues up to the end, then comes back and joins the left.
Okay.
The document I had in front of me that you looked at is a code. It's a book owned by the International Council on English Braille. It was developed by them.
Yeah.
That is the book used to reference the international phonetic alphabet. So the characters there, the tactile characters on there are tactile representations of how the phonetic alphabet looks like, how the characters look.
Okay, so we've spoken about this, and I know you've also brought in a copy of our national anthem in Braille as well, which is wonderful to see. But in terms of technology, how does that work? Because this day, in an age where we're all using touch screens and the smoother the better in terms of cell phones, laptops, televisions, everything, how does it work now? How does that translate from Braille into being technology friendly for blind people?
Yes. Originally, Braille was produced by using an awl or a stylus, and you had to press down each dot individually. Then mechanical Braille writers were developed, where you have a machine almost like a typewriter that you type and produce Braille. Then came computers, where you use a word processor to type the Braille. It's then translated into the code of the particular language and it's embossed in Braille.
Yeah.
The next development was what we call Refreshable Braille.
Yeah.
We have a device, it's like a little laptop or a PDA. It's got one line of Braille which is called refreshable because that line changes as you are reading text. It consists of pins that pop up in the dot positions of the Braille characters.
Okay, okay.
There are many of them. The Department of Education currently has a project running with a firm in Cape Town, and the project's called eBraille, where a device called Braille Note Apex. Those devices are handed out to learners at school. The textbooks are loaded on the machines. They do their work on them, and they read the Braille on this one display line.
On this device that pretty much so is adapted for them. That's amazing.
Yes.
And indeed, I wish we could carry on talking, but we've run out of time. But I think you've really given us an education as to the development of Braille and other uses, especially with the development of technology, how blind people do have to use that. So I do know that, is there a for association, the authority, how do we get hold of you? Is there a website that we can visit?
Our website is under development at this stage.
Okay.
It's going to be called www.brailleauthority.org, but it's not open yet.
All right, so we'll just keep on checking that, see when it does get developed, and I'm sure you'll find most of the information there. Christo de Klerk, thank you very much for joining us here on Morning Live, Vice President of the South African Braille Authority. Right, let's take a break.